Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to share with you a question that I got that I liked. I got this question. I thought I knew how to answer it. I was like, oh, okay, I know what this is. I know what to say. It was like an instant knee-jerk sort of ego response. And then I looked at it again and I was like, I'm not sure that I'm so sure that that's the right answer for this. So the question, and I'll shorthand it, is hey, there's loads of content out there for narcissist lovers, and it's easier to cut ties with a lover than a best friend for years, with whom one shares a social orbit, and the offences are way too petty to warrant ending the relationship. I've been roommates with my friend for a year now, and everything was amazing in the beginning, but she recently went away on vacation, and the time away from her made me realise that I've come to absolutely hate her, to the point that I get physically repulsed when she texts me or asks me for anything. She tries to drag affirmation and compliments out of me. Our lives are so intertwined, it's nearly impossible to make my case, as I'm the only person cursed with being this close to her. I want to point out to her what a C word she is, but I know it'll bite me in the arse more. I'm not passive enough to want to unprovokingly distance myself. I'm filled with an obsessive dark energy that wants to beat her in life because I know she wants me to fail. Your take on this topic would be really helpful to me, and is letting go the only answer? It seems so boring and lifeless. Why is it not okay to compete and take revenge? So my initial response was that dark energy that's inviting you to take revenge. This I'm filled with an obsessive dark energy that wants to beat her in life because I know she wants me to fail. Is your ego, and I would still stand by that. The standard psychological response to this type of thing would always be anti-conflict, anti-competition, anti-striving to redress the power balance. And as I sat with this question, I thought about it more. I thought, this is really, really interesting. Can you not present the case that psychology, typically, I know psychology, or psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, counseling, life coaching, whatever you want, is it not always tainted a little bit with a sort of a tendency towards anemia? Now, I'm not saying in this case that this lady should compete with her friend or take revenge on her. In fact, I'll answer this question based on what I'm about to share with you now. I do think there's a tendency towards anemia, a bloodless, lifeless response in psychology. And I think that this is historic. And I think that it probably is rooted in almost ancient history now. I think we're all still living inside of the Freudian reality tunnel. There are people who decry Freud, who say they hate Freud because he was a misogynist and he was this and that and a psychopath and whatever else. But even as they're decrying him and throwing stones at Freud, they don't realize they're throwing stones from a house that they live and work in that he built. When somebody is a true genius, when somebody is a true revolutionary, which Freud was, like him, hate him, most people quite who say that they hate him just quite simply don't understand him. He's probably the most, one of the most, he's definitely the most misunderstood character in psychology. But he was a genius and he revolutionized the field. He put it on the map. And he was powerful. He had a powerful consciousness, a powerful mind that transcended the normal boundaries of the day. It's interesting that I was wrestling with this question and looking at quotes from Freud because I wanted to answer somebody. They'd asked me a question about sexual perversion. And I always like citing this quote from Freud, which Freud is classically seen as like this repressed Viennese gentleman wagging his finger at people and telling them that they're neurotic, particularly wagging his finger at women. Wagging that big phallic Viennese finger. Oh. And actually, he made this quote about sexual perversion, and particularly he was an advocate of not seeing homosexuals as deviant. There's a famous letter he wrote to a woman who contacted him to cure her son. She was an American woman. She said, Dr. Freud, please cure my son of homosexuality. And he said, that's not a mental illness. There's nothing to cure. He said of sexual perversion that in his experience, it was so ubiquitous. It's so normal. It shows up in pretty much everybody to the point where it's pointless calling it sexual perversion. If all of human sexuality has fetishes and perversions inside of it, then nobody's a pervert. That's just human sexuality. So there is something that needs to be discussed about Freud. But like it or not, understand him or not, you have a position on him or you don't, if you're in psychology, you live in his reality, Tom. That's the power of narrative. That's the power of genius. It's traumatic and it burns its way into the collective consciousness. I'm a fan of Freud. I like Freud. People are always trying to get me to talk about Jung, and I'm like, Jung had nowhere near the contribution that Freud did. I was gratified to find recently a new friend of mine that I met through doing a seminar tried to get into Jung, and he bought this big book, famous book of Jung's, and he said, this is boring. It's the meanderings of an old man, self-indulgent meanderings of an old man. And I was like, well, yeah, not that there's nothing useful there. They're Jung, great contributions, but Freud is the bigger man. So that's my case. Now let me say this. I watched half of the Netflix show Freud last night, and I really enjoyed it. The portrayal of hypnosis, I was like, oh God, here we go, another misportrayal of hypnosis. It was actually portrayed well, and it's shaping up to be an interesting show. And then I fell asleep. So I woke up today and I was thinking, what a tragedy, in fact, that he was a genius and that he was accepted, because the nature of a powerful mind and the nature of genius that's committed is to impose a new way of looking at things on the world. And actually, I think it was a mistake. I think it was a historic mistake. I watched in this TV show, it's all dramatized, but the neurologists, because Freud was a doctor, he was a neurologist, he was a brain doctor, a studier of the neuro, of the brain first. And they shouted him down and told him he was wrong. But he was so compelling a speaker and such a deeply intelligent man. He convinced, not all of them, but a lot of people, that he was right. And even as a fan, I'm looking back and I'm going, oh dear, maybe that was worse. Why? I think, and if you just watched my video on meditation that I released like an hour or two ago, you'll see that I personally am coming back full circle to going, I think psychology failed. It's not useless. It's not worthless. Far from it. Psychology has done great things in the world. But I don't think it's a sharp enough tool for the job. There was neurology and there was philosophy, and everything that couldn't be answered in between, you would see a priest. There's neurology, you cut the body open. Philosophy, you talk about the concepts and you try and talk about the conceptualization of concepts, the reason behind reasoning, the meaning of meaning, and you try to draw useful conclusions from that. As to how to live, see your priest. As you're afraid to die, maybe read some Plato, maybe read some Nietzsche, maybe see the priest. And there was this sort of space of not knowingness. Well, psychology came in, I think, really, I genuinely believe, and I've been studying this since I was 15, so that's nearly, my God, that's a long time. It's not 20 years, it's coming up on 30 years. He was the man. He was the man who revolutionized things. He was the man who put psychology on the map. Psychology as we know it. Because it didn't exist in the format that we know it today before him. It was just a sub-branch of philosophy. And there it probably should have stayed. So why does it make people cupcakes? Why does it cause people accidentally to be anemic? Because we're still dealing with the hangover of a discipline that is a very, 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 very awkward mix of neurology, and philosophy, and they don't mix. They really don't mix. And they're sort of awkwardly shoved into this box. And the patients, clients, humans, get awkwardly shoved into this box too. And then we're supposed to identify viruses of the mind. We're supposed to do the epidemiology of the mind. Where did the virus come from? What's its pathology? What does it do? What are the symptoms? You know, how long is the gestation period before the client becomes symptomatic? What are the antivirals that we can give them? What are the antibiotics that we can give them to cure the virus? And it was never this. You may think I'm mad in saying this, but actually, we got led up a dead end, a total dead end, because, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I present to you my case. Please respond in the comments and tell me, what good has psychology done? Really? What good has psychology done? Show me all the numbers, the vast numbers of people who are healed, who are walking around going, my psychologist, my God, it's wonderful. There are some, and there are definitely niche issues in psychology where a trailblazer, and he said entrepreneur, we'll do that another day. But psychology as commerce is something I really want to talk about. And that also is Freud. That's Freud. Of course, he had to make money. And so psychology became commerce. Another day. Let's not say entrepreneur. Let's say trailblazers came along and they create solutions that are wonderful solutions to very specific elements of psychology. Yes, fantastic. And you go, how can you say that? Do you not love Pete Walker anymore? Do you not think the CP? I say, yeah, it's great. We could have got there with philosophy. We could have got there via a different route. We could have said, listen, I love, in a way that I've failed to convey up to this point on this channel. I know that I've utterly failed to convey many of my positions and many of my points. And as frustrated as I get, I come back to philosophy and I go, it's my fault. Like, if people don't understand what I'm talking about, it's me that's doing the talking. I have to explain it. I love humility. And when I say I love humility, what I mean is the power to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Saves us from 10 million hells. 10 million hells. And you might say, no, that's awful. A person in a position of authority should always come up with an answer, even if they don't know. That's pure ego. That's pure ego. To just say, I want to help. I'm here. I will work with you for the solutions if there are solutions. And if there are not, then I will help you deal with the worst of what the situation is. But I don't know. I don't know. God give me mercy. I don't know. We don't know. We would save ourselves from so much pain and so much strife at an individual level, at the microcosmic level, at the macrocosmic level. We've got to start embracing humility. We've got to get past this egoic toddler. I know. Ask me another one. I know. Wait, maybe you don't. And maybe your answer is half a good answer. I think that Freud's answer was half a good answer. Half. You know, secretly, and I'll do this on another video, I think Freud was a really cunning guy, and I think he took his answers from philosophy. I think, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, there are a lot of Jewish, it's not well known, but there are a lot of Jewish scholars who have written books breaking down how Freud stole the concepts of, plagiarized the concepts of psychoanalysis from the Kabbalah. Some of them criticize him for it and tear him down, and some of them are like, well, you know, did a good job. But these, like his, the whole concept, the whole cosmology, the whole worldview of psychoanalysis is actually the Kabbalah. But you go, well, maybe that's a good thing. But that's not what it was for. If you want to do the Kabbalah, then we've got to do the Kabbalah in total. It's a very modern thing to think you can just take a bit of this and take a bit of that, pop it together, and you go, I don't want to spend 10 years cleaning the steps of the temple. I don't want to walk up the steps with the water on my back like in the old kung fu movies. So fuck it, I'll just do it. Oh, my knees have broken. Oh, fuck, it didn't work. Well, you wouldn't put the work in. So that's what, and this notion of having respect for knowledge and respect for lineage, or disrespect for knowledge, disrespect for a lineage is very modern. I think it was a mistake. I really think it was a mistake, and we would have been better off saying, look, because if you look at, say for me, the Pete Walker CPTSD thing is a revolution, because he claims, or it is said, that it deals with so many mental health issues, and I 100% agree. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of my clients. I'm really in the last few years, I'm running with the ball that Pete Walker gives me. But we could have got there by other means, if psychology had stayed a branch of philosophy, and we said, we're the philosophers who deal with human suffering. We're the philosophers who find the philosophical, but we will respectfully go to our brothers and sisters in biology, go to our brothers and sisters in endocrinology, go to our brothers and sisters in whatever field you can name, and say, please help us. Can we read, that's science. That's science. Because that is the humility to say, I do not know. That's the scientific method. Posturing, posing, egotistically going, we fixed it all. We figured it all out. You want to look up some, because people go, it's in the peer-reviewed published research. Do you want to check out some meta-analyses of peer-reviewed public research? You want published research? You want to check out how many of them have major flaws in them, because they're made by humans. They're made by people. And so I think we're coming at it from the wrong philosophical point of view. I think we're all still doing Freud. This is my pet theory. People have poo-pooed this and said it's nonsense. I think Freud was desperate for money. He was a genius. He was desperate for fame, desperate for money. He didn't want to be a neurologist. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be known, and he took from wherever he could. He probably was like taking from everywhere, and probably one of the places that he took from, nobody knew about the Kabbalah in those days. It's like me now with some of the psychology that they use behind ninjutsu, and I'm like, I could use that. I could repackage that and sell it, and nobody would know because it's not known. And then I'm like, you can't do that, you tit. It's wrong. Don't do it. And also, if the seed, and here I'm going mystical, let me go mystical. If the seed in the root has got even any grain of poison in it, the plant that grows will be poisonous and it will hurt people. And I think it's hurt people. Not just Freudian psychoanalysis, all of it, everything that he spawned just to fulfill his needs is tainted. So why would it make people cupcakes? Because there is no blood in psychology. It is in its essence anemic. You are a patient with a virus. I've been raging against toxic passivity. What is more passive than the relationship between, what are you called? A patient and a surgeon. So I'm literally in a relationship with a surgeon right now. I love my surgeon. We chat on the phone, and we can't see each other face to face, and we're talking about my knee, and we're talking about what he did to my knee. I love him. He's great. Very intelligent man. When it comes to knees, he's one of the best in the UK. I'm so lucky that I have access to him. He knows nothing about strengthening the knee. He knows nothing about, not nothing, that's not fair. He is not interested in weight training. It's a thing that it's for physiotherapists and people like, he talks to me and he goes, weirdos like you who lift weights up and down for no reason. And I'm like, but the knee is made of muscle and ligaments and they have to be strengthened. Not interested. Don't just accept the authority. Question it and question the basis on which the authority is there. He's not a bad man. He wants me to heal. He really does. He'd do anything to help me heal and help me to heal quickly. But he doesn't know what the healing process is. So I have to drag from him. What can I do? What may I do to get this thing going? And so then I have to go to physiotherapists, and I actually have a physiotherapist now who's had the same injury as me. So I'm in contact with him. Thank God for the technology. We can talk. So all of medicine, this is a comparison that's been made many, many times, but we really need to start to get to grips with it now in this time. If you look at they say the difference between Western and Eastern medicine, and it's apocryphal, but it's got truth to it, is in Eastern medicine, you pay the doctor when you're healthy, and you cut off his payments when you're sick. That would be in China. That would be if you were a nobility in China, you're of a noble house, and the doctor comes, you're paying him in a certain amount of gold every month to keep you healthy. And when you drop out of health, you withdraw the payments. So there's a motivator for him. Similarly with Indian medicine, similarly with Japanese medicine, the idea is to make you healthy. There's also branches also in the East, but in Russia, of an idea of maintaining health and being robust and being strong. And they have similar practices, breathing practices. There's all this weird fetish of dunking yourself in cold water, which I don't like, but they tell me is wonderful. And now they've done published research on it. It's peer reviewed. The Wim Hof method is very, very rooted in the Eastern Russian, Chinese, Indian, and Japanese methodologies for maintaining your health. We don't have that in the West. An idea of maintaining your health. And so it's anemic because there's no blood in it. You're supposed to show up as a patient to the psychotherapist. He's big papa, she's big mama, and she's going to put into you the solution. And you're just going to go nom, 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 like a little bird, nom, 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 receiving the half masticated worms. That's a pleasant image. You'll have to look up the word mastication now. Did he say mastication on a video? Yeah. She chewed it up, spat it in your mouth. And you're a passive receptacle of the cure. You're a passive receptacle of the surgery. In surgery, they literally knocked me out. They sent me unconscious. That's what surgery is. You don't get more passive than that. And I was told, I said, would we do this with me conscious and just local anesthetic? And they said, no, because if there's any resistance at all, you can hurt the tendons that we're working with. And I was like, oh, that sounds a little bit like working with a client doing psychology. When you have resistance, there's damage to the tendons, there's damage as you're doing the process. It makes us anemic because it's passive. There isn't a model in psychology for normal. It's implied. It hangs over everything. You're not normal. All right, doc, what's normal?
You want to be normal like me because I'm the psychologist and I'm going to heal you so you can be exactly as I am, just as normal as me. Do you want to live why wouldn't you want to live like me? Why not? I'm the psychologist.
Yeah, that sounds great, dude. You look like a fucking great role model for what it's like to be a healthy, hale human being in the world.
Yes, but I'm right, damn it. I'm right. I've got the degrees.
Great, fantastic. Are you a human? What's the model? What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? Tell me that. Nope. Because it's all anemic. There's no blood flowing through those vessels. Nobody's telling you this is how to be a human being. You should be like this. Nobody would dare. Nobody would dare imagine that. So somebody recently on Instagram, we were just chatting. It was a frivolous thing about like, why do you call yourself a life coach? And I was like, well, it was a joke in the beginning. The whole thing was kind of like a bit of a laugh in the beginning. I'm not laughing now. How could anybody be a life coach? How can anybody coach you how to live a life? They can't. It's impossible. But it's the only route in to be able to say to people, look, you have to move forward. You've got to live your life. You've got to be an alive human being. You're not a client. If you become a client or you become a patient, you will get sick. That's psychology. That's not law of attraction, mystical bullshit. If you identify with being a client and with being a patient, you will be sick because clients are sick. You will be passive, because patients are patient. That's what they patiently do, is they patiently work on their patients, and they receive the wisdom and the skill and the solutions externally. You're an empty vessel. You're a wank sock for that person's expertise. So it is anemic. All of psychology is anemic. If you and you know, I have psychologists following me, and I would say we've all got to think about this. We've got to do better. We've got to do better. Ask your psychologist, how should I be? You've told me I'm not normal. I have a virus called anxiety. I have a virus called depression. I have a virus called agoraphobia. How should I be? What's the model? What's normal? What's good? What does a good human look like? You, psychologist? Is it you?
Don't ask me difficult questions. It's not within my remit. Beep, 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 beep.
They don't know. They don't know what's fucking great about their lives. Well, you might say this is a bit harsh. Okay. You have an institution that ostensibly is advertised. It's implicit and it's explicit that if you are sick, they can fix you. Shouldn't they be held to account? Shouldn't psychologists be held to account? If I say to you, I'm going to help you deal with CPTSD, and I'm riddled with anxiety, depression, and anger management issues, don't you have the right to be like, well, if this works, homie, why are you so fucked up? Why are you addicted to drugs? Why are you living like this? Why are you out there fighting with people? Why are you out of shape, overweight? Why are you clearly miserable if your method works so well? Can we ask that question? How happy was Freud? How free from sexual neurosis was Freud? Can we ask that question? Like, we should be able to ask that question. And if we can't, that's where it becomes anemic. That's where the whole thing becomes anemic. Back to this lady's question. So to wrap that particular segment up, psychology is rooted in Freudian psychoanalysis, like it or not. That's just the way it is. It was a makeshift solution by a very intelligent man who wanted to be wealthy and he wanted to be famous. And I think in the end, he succeeded. I don't know how happy he was, but he wanted to be wealthy, he wanted to be famous, and he did very well. Fine. Thank you, Mr. Freud, for everything he gave us and didn't give us, because now I'm thinking it was a mistake. It makes you passive because it's rooted in a model that is shit. It's dog shit. It's anemic. There's no blood in it. There's no life in it. The vessels are shrunken. It's frightened. Psychologists and psychology are frightened of dealing with the issue of how should a person live? Tell me, how should a person live? And who the hell are you to tell another human being how to live? Can we ask that question? And can we at least have the debate? Can we at least have the discussion and say, well, you know, because to me, we've gotten so stuck. I mean, I think this happened years ago. Psychology is now part of the sickness. Psychology is the neurosis, is part of the neurosis. Because, listen, and I know I haven't explained this properly. I'm going to try. It's a total psychedelic, apocalyptic, revelatory shift. You go from one world to another world when you understand what Pete Walker is talking about. You don't have anxiety. You're not afflicted with depression. You're receiving a communication from the body-mind system that is there to help you and preserve you and make you whole again. Do you see how that's, to me, that's obvious, but I think most people miss that. You're living in one world. Oh, I'm just walking down the street. Suddenly I feel anxious. But if I say to you, there's nothing, if you're anxious, there's something wrong with me. I have to take pills. Why? For my anxiety. That's like, you know, I get a wheat allergy and my eyes go, I get wheat. This is the wheat allergy. Gluten. It's not that. It's not that. Your system works beautifully. It's an intricate, highly intelligent system, and it offers you emotions as messengers. It's all emotions, by the way. Depression, anxiety, anger management, grieving. It's emotions. It's emotions. That's all it is. Once we've penetrated that and we can work with that, You're home free. There's nothing else. Their feelings, where do they take place?
In my mind. In the client's mind, there are feelings.
No. Where do they take place?
In the brain. The brain's broken, so slice it. Yeah.
Which they did for years. For years. Absolute barbarism. Slicing and poking and eradicating bits of people's brain. My God, it gets worse. There were psychiatrists who thought that the problem was in the teeth, in the breasts, and they started doing surgery there too. And that's in recent history. It's appalling. As late as the 1930s and 1940s, that was still taking place in America. It's total evil, Spanish Inquisition level quackery, total quackery. So I'm coming out, I'm going, maybe more from the Eastern point of view. We could say it like that. It's like, no, dude. You say you feel anxious. Great, you're alive. You're alive. Your body, your brain, it wants to preserve you. That side of you that's evolved to deal with threat has woken up. So there's threat in your life. Where's the threat? Don't kill the fucking anxiety. That's you. That's like, oh, my hand's not working today. Have you got a hammer? What for? My hand's being really naughty. I'm just going to smash it until it doesn't work. Yeah, sure. That's the chemical solution, by the way. That's the chemical solution. My hand's naughty. I don't like what my hand's doing. It's not convenient for me. Like, I want to go out with the girls and have a nice cocktail lunch, but I got this depression. Is there anything you could do that would kill my feelings? Yeah. We've got these powerful drugs with horrendous side effects. Why don't you take some of them? Oh, that's better. I'm glad those pesky feelings have gone away. My hand's being naughty again. Do you have a hacksaw? It's lunacy. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with you. You're not poisoned. You're not afflicted with an illness. You're not unlucky. It's not the finger of God has come down and condemned you. You're in a response to pain that was so overwhelming at the time, you couldn't deal with it. And you were overwhelmed with pain, and this is your response. Your body and mind and your emotions are trying to help you. They're trying to heal you. If we can walk down that path, we'll have a less anemic response. So my less anemic response, as a life coach, as preposterous as that title is, maybe as a philosopher, maybe as a human, maybe as somebody who's studied a subject whose opinion you trust, and that's enough, though that wouldn't be a pithy title. Richard Grannon, there's somebody whose opinion you trust and whose... That wouldn't go over too well. That's a shit name for a website. I think that whether you're introvert, extrovert, you're artistic, you're scientific, you love vanilla ice cream, you love pistachio, whatever else, we can have some basic rules as human beings. You have the right to be you. You have the right to be you. You have the right to be free from abuse, whether it's personal or by a group or by anybody. You have a right to be free from imprisonment. You have a right to be free from having your mind and emotions manipulated. You have the right to follow any pursuits you want, crafts, hobbies, martial arts, dancing, horses, bicycles, whatever you want. As long as it's within the remit of the law, you can do all of that. I think that these are basics. And then beyond that, we should start saying, okay, why don't we look at developing some kind of a moral philosophy? Because, and you might think this is a fetish or I'm going on about it, or it's like, why has he come back to moral philosophy? We're going, oh, here's psychology. What's psychology about? It's about humans that don't work. Okay, can we talk about humans that do work? Yes, absolutely we can. A human that works needs to know how to function in the world. What is it that tells you how to function in the world? A moral philosophy. There's nothing else. Nothing else can teach you or show you how to function in life but a moral philosophy. Your moral philosophy doesn't have to be mine. I'm not didactic. I'm not like, you will do it like this. There's a book here. It was written 4,000 years ago by some nutters living in some high conflict environment with precious resources where people were getting their arms and legs chopped off every day. They gave us some rules. Let's try and adhere to that. That seems like a shit idea to me. Respect for history, respect for the culture, respect for the text. Beautiful. It's part of humanity, part of who we are. Let's keep it. Let's preserve it. Let's study it. Let's see what it can teach us. Absolutely. But let's not try and live by it, because that's for a different context. It doesn't make sense with all we know now to try and live by that. But I'm not saying what some, I don't know, like there's like the big ego thugs of science are saying, fuck it off, fuck it off. See that religion, fuck it off. Oh, really? You don't think there's anything in there that would be useful? Wow. Wow, you're arrogant. Not one word of this text that represents at least 3,000 years worth of wisdom of human beings who went through things we never have to go through. You just want to that's gone. The balls on this fucking guy. The balls on this kid. You can't do that. You can't do that. You've got to look. You've got to say, okay, maybe there's something here. Why don't I have a little look through it and just read some of it? You know, I'm a grown up. I can ignore the stuff I don't think is useful and take the rest. We've got to have a moral philosophy. We've got to have a system. We've got to have a framework. You personally, I'm saying we. And as soon as you say we, it's like, ooh, let's impose something on the collective. That's a problem. Each one of you individually needs to come up with a moral philosophy. You need to answer some questions. What is the purpose of life? I don't care what answer you give, homies, but you've got to have one. You've got to have something. It could be religion. It could be philosophy. You could take it from a science fiction novel. That's not a silly suggestion. That's not me being facetious. There are good science fiction novels that give you like an idea of cosmology that's as good as anything else I've ever seen. But you need one. You need one. You need a sense of meaning. You need to have your idea of what right is, your idea of what wrong is, and you need to be able to answer the question, how should a person live? Because if you can't do that, you'll never develop these magical things in psychology called boundaries. Oh, we're going to teach people boundaries. Okay. You're going to artificially give people the shield and the sword, but you're not going to show them when to use it, how to use it, where to use it, or even how to survive the situation without a shield or a sword. That seems odd to me. That seems like a really like cack-handed, awkward, like, why is that your solution? We're going to teach you boundaries. This is how to say no. The way you're saying no, you sound like a school mom. I'm not a school mommy person. I don't know if I'm comfortable like wagging my finger at people and saying, listen here, I find what you said totally offensive and I want to speak to a manager. Well, that's not me. I don't want to model what you're doing. I want something for me. So you should have something for you that is not anemic, that isn't adhering to some weird implicit ideology. Because unfortunately, like the politics creeps into psychology, politics creeps into all the social sciences. And I'm like, why do we do it like this? Why are we so scared of talking about morality? Oh, because, well, if there's a morality, then they're wrong. And you can't say that that's wrong. I'm like, well, you can. You can at least have the conversation. You can at least present the case. You could at least go, hey, this is why I think that probably isn't a fucking good idea. Don't shut it down, but it gets shut down. That's a problem. So this lady's question as to what she should do in the situation that she's in. And all of this, she would never need to ask, and we'd never need to bring this up if she had a moral philosophy. She's not comfortable with the behavior of somebody. She's young and she's growing. She's young, she's got with somebody. When you're young, you just get flung together with people. They don't share your worldview. They don't even have a worldview. You don't even have a worldview. You're still growing. Like you're still growing in sort of into a philosophical reality tunnel. You're developing a worldview. And yeah, I had the same experience. I was hanging out with people. I was like, they're my friend. Who's my friend? Why is he your friend? We're in the same year at school. Is that the basis of being friends? Is it? You're just in the same building at the same time? Yes, because when you're a kid, that's how it works. When you get older, it's not like that. And yeah, she might be being a bit of a dick. Now, normal psychology would say, grey rock, withdraw as much as you can, don't engage, don't provoke, and then just try and move out. Which we're all aware of all this. So there's two things here. One thing is, I think the advice that's appropriate for middle-aged people who are probably dealing with a person who they're married to or their boss, where there's an awful lot to lose, this advice makes sense. I would say if you're younger, it doesn't really make sense, and you're not as bound up because the consequences won't be as bad. If you fall out with them, you're meeting people all the time, and the basis on which you make friendships is like, oh, we're the same age, we're in the same physical geographical location. What music do you like? Oh, I like this. And that's it. That's how I used to make friends when I was younger. You've much less to lose, so we don't need to be so careful. We don't need to be so anemic. We don't, like, when the stakes are high. It's kids, it's money, it's houses, it's drama, it's court cases. We got to be like, we got to be super careful. But when you're a kid, I don't think you need to be as careful. In fact, I would argue that as you're growing up into an adult, when you set your moral philosophy and you set your boundaries, you do need to do some muscle flexing on the boundary front. It's healthy to be saying to people, listen, you're and this, if you've joined, some of you have only just joined the last 10 minutes, the case was given that a young lady living with a roommate, and the roommate is super annoying and demanding affirmation and leaning on her for confirmation that she's a cool person, affirmation that she's basically just a needy human being who's gotten on her nerves. I would say, no, you don't have to put up with that. If this girl is being competitive, apparently this girl is being competitive, you can push back. That's okay. If there's no consequence and you understand the power dynamic, like if you push back and you get thrown out of an apartment that you otherwise would have wanted to stay in, well, then you're a dummy who doesn't understand good martial strategy. So don't do that. But if you've nothing to lose and you both have the same right to the space as the other person, don't absorb the implicit ideology of an anemic topic like psychology that's been applied to middle-aged people who are going through really tricky divorces with extremely nasty cluster B personality types, and then go, oh, I guess I should do it like that. I guess I should be all meek. I guess I should grey rock. I guess I should be the bigger person and withdraw from the battlefield. Maybe not. Maybe you just tell them to go fuck themselves. And maybe that is a better, healthier reference experience and growth experience for you than this anemic response where we're all being super careful. Because I have to tell you, ladies and gents, I'm not that careful. I've been advocating grey rock for years. Why do I do it? Why am I anemic? Well, we're back to commerce. I do it to cover my own arse. I do it because I know that the other options are dangerous. But maybe I'm guilty of poisoning the well as well by suggesting that our only response is an anemic one. If you understand the power dynamic and your martial strategy is in place, and when I say martial strategy, I mean you look at it as somebody who is like in a war and you're capable of making an accurate assessment. These are the threats, these are the targets, these are my weapons, these are my allies, this is my fallback point, this is what could possibly happen if I do this, this, and this. And you've made an assessment that you're actually in a pretty strong position. Don't let the person off. Don't let some arsehole get away with it. You also have the option, if you're in a weak position, to get to a stronger position and then return fire. Do what you can. Don't let them fucking get away with it because of some implicit anemic, like, oh, just go your own way, or it's the spiritual thing to do. I'm of the opinion that sometimes the most spiritual thing to do, dependent on the context, would go right the way through the full scale of confrontation to physical violence. I am happy to and have laid the headbutt on people who were narcissistic psychopaths. But the power dynamic was such that they weren't my boss. There was no dire consequence to me other than a fight, a scrap. And so the power dynamic was such that I could do it. Maybe we do need to be careful about leaning too hard into super careful arse covering strategies. I actually don't really use grey rock, to be honest with you. I use something called lying. I lie to get rid of narcissists, or open confrontation. I'll just say to them, you're a cunt. I have said that in recent history to a diagnosed narcissist, you're a cunt and I won't have anything else to do with you. Now fuck off, mate. And that was the end of that. Can also can. Malaysia Ballet. So I'm not saying get into conflict for the sake of conflict. That's a pain in the arse. You get these people and they newly learn their boundaries, and they used to be meek, and they're all like, oh, I've got boundaries now, so I'm going to start fights with everybody. Somebody gave me a shield, somebody gave me a sword, so I'm going to start tonking people over the head with it. Well, then you're just a dick if you do that. You've got no moral compass. You've got no moral philosophy. So now you're being abusive, because you shouldn't do that to people for no good reason. Back to a more philosophical, more mystical solution. Mystical? Yeah, I guess so. Mystical. When I was a kid, I lived above a pool hall in Birmingham city centre when I was at Aston University. And I live next to, people who are from Birmingham will know the place. I live next door to the Electric Cinema, which is a super weird art house cinema, mannequins hanging off it, coloured purple. But we knew the owner, and he was a really cool Sufi dude. And he would let us go in late at night, and we'd watch like art house flicks, and sit in there, and we'd bring some drinks and whatever. It was really, really cool. So there's an upside and there's a downside. It was also a really seedy area, high crime, a lot of bad people going into the pool hall. And in order for us to get to our apartments, we'd have to go past the level of the pool hall to get to the apartments. So there was trouble sometimes. Eventually, they set up a nightclub underneath this place, and they would start, there was an after hours nightclub. They'd start the music on a Friday and a Saturday at 3 a.m. and let it run till 8. So I started calling the council complaining, because they didn't have a license to do that when the same landlord was renting apartments to us. So then the word gets out. Some kid who thinks he's a hard case because he does Muay Thai at such and such a club in Birmingham, and he's into that MMA, right? He thinks he's hard. He's grassing us up. What are we going to do about that? So the word gets back to me through the pool hall indirectly. We're going to batter this fella. The next time we see him, because they knew me, because I'd gone up to them first, and I was like, listen, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're playing music really fucking loud that shakes the building. So they knew who I was. I didn't call the council first. I spoke to them first. I spoke to the landlord, this crazy Greek lady. I was like, can you please? And she was like, oh, darling, I tell them all the time to turn it off. I'm like, no, you fucking don't. So for a couple of weeks, I'm scared, because I'm like 20 years old, and I think I'm going to be getting a visit from like 8 nightclub bouncers who can kick the fuck out of me. And I was lucky at that time. I had access to an instructor called Jeff Thompson, and I was going over from Birmingham to Coventry to train with Jeff Thompson and his guys. And I told him about the situation, and he said, when you're engaged in a conflict, so every step of the way, make sure that you have God in your corner. And I was like, well, I don't really believe in God. He said, it doesn't matter. You know what it means, don't you? So make sure you're doing the right thing. Make sure that you're doing the right thing, and that you're in the right. Because when you know that you're in the wrong and you do a thing, you do a bad thing. And the karma of the thing that you do when you know you're in the wrong sucks. I'm paraphrasing. When you know you're in the right and you act from the right, you're in the right place at the right time, and you've got God in your corner, you'll have a lot more strength in the conflict. And that gave me peace to a degree. It gave me peace. I went to my Muay Thai class again, and I was actually the organizer of the first Muay Thai society at Aston University. That was a battle in and of itself to get that organized. And there was an instructor there, an assistant instructor called Marcus. And I'd known him for like 2 years, ever since I'd been in Aston. And one day I was walking down the road in Birmingham, and I heard Marcus say to me, "Oh, Richie." And I said, "Yeah, all right, mate." And we had a little chat, and he said, "Have you got a problem with the nightclub under the Majestic?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because I live above that." He went, "That's my door firm, that." I went, "Oh, fuck." I said, now I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it from my own fucking instructor now. And he said, what's the problem? And I was like, well, we're renting there, and they've brought a club in there after we've signed our rental contracts, and we've got to study, man. We're trying to study, and you've got this after hours club that literally shakes the rooms. And he was like, oh, okay, don't worry about it. And he made a call, and he got the club shut down straight away. He shut it down. Wasn't what I knew. Wasn't about getting in fights and being a tough guy and all of that. It was a conversation between two people who knew each other and trusted each other. And he could have gone either way because he had a job there. He had a job working there, and he tanked it for what was right. So he did what was right. Me, I didn't have to worry about anything after that. It was done. It was all done above board. For some reason, when I called the council, it wasn't working out. But in Birmingham, I guess that's the way it works. You call the right person, you got a relationship with, and that was it. It was finished. It was over. Make sure, if you are going to engage in conflict, my advice to you, not as a psychologist, but just as a person, is that make sure you're doing the right thing. Know that you're doing the right thing first. And if there's any doubt in your mind that you're not, don't do it. Hold off on it. Ladies and gents, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you like my channel, then please do subscribe here, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers. It won't let me turn off the broadcast. So awkward. I'm really hungry. I have to go. You guys want to hang out? Amazing. Hey, somebody's trying to give me $100. Whoa. Let me see. What does this say? Cameron sent me $100. Thanks, brother. Love the videos. Keep it up. Well, you're very welcome, Cameron. I'm glad that you enjoyed the videos. And thanks for sending me $100 $100. Wow, I can't leave. I can't go eat because it won't let me switch this thing off. This is so awkward. Does anybody know any songs? Let me try again. If I suddenly disappear, I'm trying to switch off. Okay, I'm just going to close the tab. Thanks, guys. I'll speak to you soon.